Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti has asked the NCAA not to swing the hammer at Michigan for the sign-stealing scandal, which is his job. And that's what I think ultimately this is about. Because Tony Petitti has to make sure that everything is right and perfect and glorious for the Big Ten, whether he agrees that Michigan deserves to be punished, whether he agrees that Michigan has already been punished, that doesn't matter. His job is to look out for the interests of the Big Ten and the schools that consist in that conference. And I think that sucks, to tell you the truth. To tell just a flat-out anecdote, I live in a small town. I grew up in an even smaller town. And the county that I live in, one of my friends, his brother and he were involved in a car crash where the driver of their car was drunk. And my friend was badly injured and his brother was killed. And the driver that he was riding with was over the legal limit and absolutely should have gone to prison for a long time. And his mom went to the prosecutor and said, nobody wins if you ruin this kid's life. That this kid that had been driving the car that killed her son and badly injured her other son was great friends with them and said, hey, nobody wins in this situation because my family's the one that's been hurt and damaged. And that guy driving the car knows and is never going to get over the fact of what he did. So I'm begging you for mercy. And as the mother of the victim, I'm telling you, please don't send this guy to prison. Don't send him away for a really long time because it's not going to make me feel any better. He's going to learn his lesson from this. It's not going to make his family feel any better about this. So please don't do this. And if you do, the community's going to know that I begged you not to do this. And I don't think you win by sentencing, by looking like a hard ass, by sending this guy to prison either. And it worked. Prosecutor didn't do that. And that's what I think Tony Petitti's mission was here. I think he's saying, hey, I know that they did something wrong and you know they did something wrong. But it would be in our best interest for everyone to stop talking about this. Because here's what's going to happen if the NCAA says, you know what, time served, all's well that ends well. Let's call that a day. If that's what happens, we're going to bitch about it for maybe 3-4 days after that. And then we'll move on to something else. But the longer that this story persists, the longer that we keep talking about it, the longer that it makes the NCAA look bad, it makes the Big Ten look bad, it makes Michigan look bad, and by proxy, it makes Tony Petitti look bad. And while I think that sucks, while I think justice deserves to be served, while I think most rational human beings would say and agree it's abundantly clear Michigan ran afoul of the rules, I think they're going to get off scot-free. And I have said for a very long time that I would believe Michigan is going to be punished for this when I see it and not a moment before that. Because it's always been much more likely that the toothless NCAA that exists today was going to remain toothless than just magically start sprouting some sharp fangs out of their mouth and sink them into the Michigan Wolverines. It just was never going to be super likely. And so I understand why Tony Petitti asked the NCAA to say, hey, maybe we just let bygones be bygones, right? It's his job, ultimately, to do such a thing. Now, I also think it's his job to leak that to some Michigan-friendly reporters to say, hey, just so you know, your boy's looking out for the Wolverines, trying to get them off the hook. Just remember that. And also, if you could let everybody know that we're trying to get this done and over with, that sure would be great. Now, he has to completely disregard how that looks to 17 other fan bases. Because I think the hope then becomes like, well, hey, nobody else is going to find out about this, right? Now, that's not how college sports works. That's not how college football works. And I think it's somewhat concerning that he would think that you just kind of get off under the radar by saying, hey, nobody has to know about this. Well, they do. They do have to know about it, and they did, and nobody's really happy about it. And maybe Tony Petitti thinks that the book should be thrown at Michigan for what they did, what they covered up, that goes well beyond sign stealing, that it's pretty clear that they had a pretty big culture of flat-out lawlessness and didn't care about morality or integrity in a whole wide variety of situations, but that's neither here nor there. This is just about the sign stealing. He's got to look out for the Big Ten. And sometimes looking out for the Big Ten is compromising your own morals, compromising your own ethics and integrity, and doing what your job needs to do. Does that suck? Undoubtedly. Absolutely it sucks. And for a while I sat here and thought, well, who gains in this situation? Who wins if the case is just thrown out the door and the NCAA says, what case against Michigan sign stealing? What are you talking about? I've never even heard of that. I looked through the documents. It's not there. Who gains from that? Well, Michigan gains from that because they don't have to have any repercussions whatsoever for their actions. The Big Ten gains from that because people stop talking about, and I firmly believe this, that if the NCAA came out today and said, hey, not going to have any issues with what Michigan did, no penalties, no nothing, we'll be mad about it for a couple of days. And some people, namely Ohio State fans, won't ever forget that happened. But we'll move on to the next thing that pisses us off, the next thing that is an uproar. This we're outraged about. I firmly believe that. But the Big Ten wins because people stop talking about one of its member institutions that did something completely and wholly against the rules, no matter what Michigan fans will tell you. And Tony Petitti wins because he looks like he went to bat for one of his member institutions. He got them off the hook. It is essentially as if Michigan was Ben Wade in 310 to Yuma, and his outlaw gang came to bust him out of prison. And when things got tough and everybody thought this is it, this is when Michigan's going to the gallows, baby, Tony Petitti rides into town a whomping and a wailing, starts firing off his pistols up the hip, shoots down the noose that Michigan was going to be hung with at the gallows in front of the whole town. It's like a Wild West, baby. He comes in and he saves the day. And when you come in and save the day, it sure does make people endeared to you. It sure gives you some leverage down the line. So while I think it sucks, I think that it's much more likely that Michigan never receives a penalty for the sign stealing scandal than they get the hammer dropped on them, that they're going to get the death penalty, the national championship's going to be removed. I never thought that, and I still continue to believe that that's never going to be in the cards whatsoever. But that's just how I view it. I want to hear from you in the comments below. Why do you think the Big Ten asked the NCAA not to punish Michigan? Why do you think they did that? And what do you think the punishment will be? And what do you think the punishment should be? Because I think they're two different things. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. I appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.